Ladies and gentlemen, members of the City Council, please attend the call meeting of the City Council to be held in the 6th floor conference room, 801 Crawford Street, 5 p.m. Tuesday, February 25th, 2014, for the purpose of a public work session. In addition, you may consider a motion to go into closed meeting by order of the mayor. Mr. Cherry?
Here.
Mr. Edmonds? Mr. Meeks? Mr. Moody?
Here.
Ms. Simmons? Ms. Randall?
Yes.
Mayor Wright?
Here.
Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, Deborah. We've got 6 items on the agenda tonight. Elizabeth has a conflict and she'll join us for the regular session. We have an addition to our extended family. George is a new grandfather, baby boy.
Good.
Ron is going to help us hold down the fort tonight as George is with his family where he should be.
That's right.
And today's your daughter's birthday.
12 years old.
Yeah.
He's getting old.
He is, or the daughter?
No, don't reverse it.
Yes, ma'am. But we are going to reverse the order of the business because we have with us a representative from the Hampton Roads Sanitation District, and he has to get over to James City County by 6. So we'll lead off with the briefing on the consent order and the hybrid plan. As you know, we gave you a briefing a few meetings ago, and on your agenda tonight is the resolution which we recommend that you adopt. This is the cheapest route. You had questions about what is the actual benefit to Portsmouth, which makes more sense economically. And the hybrid plan does. It makes more sense from an environmental perspective, but also from a cost-saving basis. And Brian?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, sir.
Vice Mayor, members of council. Before I start, I want to introduce Ted Hennepin. Ted is the general manager of the Hampton Roads Sanitation District. He's been the general manager for the last 7 years, and before that, he was the public works director for the city of Hampton. So he's very familiar with sort of both sides of the equation, and has been a good partner as we've worked on this consent order project. So again, just we're going to revisit this. We gave you a briefing. We also sent you some supplementary information after that meeting as far as to update you on the proposed hybrid plan. Just a little bit about HRSD. I know there's some questions. HRSD has been around a long time. They're a political subdivision of the state, chartered in 1940. They serve 17 counties and cities. They span from the beach all the way up to West Point, so they're on both sides, south side and on the peninsula. They've got 9 treatment plants, over 500 miles of pipe. They are governed by an 8-member commission that's appointed by the governor, and each member it's a residency requirement. So there's a member that has to live at the beach. There's a member that has to live in Portsmouth, has to live in Chesapeake, etc. And they are who's responsible for the affairs, just like city council is for the affairs of the city. They're responsible for the affairs of HRSD. Tonight, the resolution that's on the agenda to adopt is to authorize the city manager to adopt to sign the memorandum of agreement. Basically, what that does is that outlines the responsibilities for HRSD and for the city. And so, what HRSD, and these are just sort of the highlights. Again, they're going to develop that regional wet weather management plan. Remember, the consent order is dealing with these wet weather overflows and preventing that. So they're going to take on that responsibility regionally. They're going to do the work necessary to correct that, include not only in their own system, but in the individual systems. They're also, and just as importantly, they're going to assume that regulatory and legal responsibility related to the SSO, those sanitary overflows. So once this work is complete, if there's an issue with a sanitary sewer overflow that's related to wet weather capacity, HRSD is going to have that legal responsibility and not the city, and that's a very important point. And again, they're going to fully fund those capital projects necessary to take care of compliance with the consent order and those capacity-related upgrades. So what are the city's responsibilities? Well, like we said, we continue to own and maintain and operate our system. They're still going to be customers of the city just like they are now. We still have to do rehabilitation. I mean, we have an old system, and so we'll continue to have to maintain and rehab our system and take care of the defects as we find them as prescribed in our MOM program, the Management, Operations, and Maintenance. And then we're agreeing to assist with HRSD, which we would do anyway, with providing them with our flow data, our modeling data, the plans and specs and things that we'll be doing in our system. So this is the nitty-gritty, what you all were asking last time. What's the benefit? So I would like to walk you through this. We talk about the go it alone here, that this is the current plan. This is the current consent order that we are already obligated to do. So in that plan, HRSD is going to have to do about $1.1 billion worth of work. That's only in their system, and that they'll need to do to comply with their current consent decree. In this column right here, all localities in the region, so this is everybody, all those localities we talked about, in the aggregate, their estimated consent order compliance costs are $2.1 billion. So when you add the two together, that's almost $3.2 billion that will have to be spent collectively to comply with the consent order. So what's Portsmouth's cost in this? It's right about $300 million. So of this $2 billion, $300 million is what our cost is. So that's the current where we are today. So under the hybrid plan, HRSD is going to take on that responsibility and do all of the necessary work. So they're going to spend an additional $1 billion. So this total here of $2.1 billion, that's the total cost that they'll spend doing the hybrid plan. So they're going to spend more, which makes sense because they're assuming that liability, they're going to do the work. But the benefit to the localities, right now, this $2 billion represents mandated rehabilitation work that we have to do to comply with the consent order. If we do the hybrid plan, the consent order will be modified. That mandated rehabilitation requirement goes away for all localities. So now that $2.1 billion that the localities have to spend is no longer required. And so the difference is here, combined, we're going to spend $3 billion. Here, we're only going to spend $2 billion. So regionally, that's a $1 billion savings. Now, again, Portsmouth, we were going to spend $300 million in the go it alone, the current plan. Well, like I mentioned on the previous slide, we still have to do that maintenance, that MOM requirements. So we have an old system. There's still rehabilitation requirements as things get old and get worn out and those kinds of things we don't currently spend enough on. So we still have to spend. It's not like our costs go to zero. But we estimate that we'll spend $150 million less under the hybrid plan. So this $150 million that we may spend over, say, the next 25 to 30 years is just to do those required MOM components. But it's on our schedule, and it's not mandated. We have to do so much per year, and so we can better plan for what needs to be done and the method and manner in which we do it. So, talking about the benefits. So, we talked about on the last slide that HRSD is going to spend more under the hybrid plan. Well, HRSD, so the question that came up last time, well, what is that going to cost our customers? So, if you take that $1 billion, HRSD has 460,000 customers throughout their service area. So that $1 billion gets spread across all 460,000 customers. So when you spread it across that many customers, Portsmouth has just under 32,000 customers. So of that extra $1 billion, Portsmouth's customers will spend about $73 million extra over 20 years. That's the time frame that the work is anticipated to be done. However, HRSD, remember, they're going to be doing the work, including doing work in individual systems. So they're going to be doing work in Portsmouth, they're going to be doing work in Norfolk, in Chesapeake, etc. We estimate that the value of work likely to be done in Portsmouth for rehab and capacity and wet weather compliance is on the order of $115 million. So there's a positive difference of $42 million that will benefit, that we'll receive as a result of doing the hybrid plan with them doing the work. Yes, we'll spend a little bit more. Their bill will have to be a little higher, but we'll get more benefit. And then we've already talked about the $300 million is what we're obligated to do today. But with the hybrid plan, we'll only have to spend maybe $150 million. So that's a savings of $150 million. So coupled with the positive difference of what HRSD is doing, that net benefit to Portsmouth is on the order of $190 million. That's a significant savings to our citizens and to our customers. So just to, again, so we've talked about the cost, but just to reiterate the benefits. HRSD is paying for those wet weather improvements, those capacity upgrades and repairs that are needed. Second bullet point, again, want to stress, when that work is done, they have that responsibility, that legal liability that's so critical that we don't want to have if we don't have to. So anytime there would be a problem in the future, they have that responsibility. We optimize the work. We focus on the worst areas that need to have the work done to get that biggest bang for the buck. We still, as the locality, we're still the first response for service. We still own the system. We still maintain the system, serve our customers. And again, we no longer have that mandated rehabilitation schedule that's currently, that we are required to do. And of course, I've outlined the cost savings, which are significant, on the order of $190 million. So, as you can see, where all the yeses, there are 4 localities that are all meeting and voting on this tonight. We're the last 4, but you can see it's got broad support with all of our neighbors throughout the region that this is the best way to go and move forward to comply with the consent order. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
2 questions. First of all, the numbers, the figures you came up with, how accurate are them? Is that order of magnitude? I mean, I see the round 300 million, 150 million. Did you do something scientific? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we have been working on this project since 2007 with Greeley and Hansen are our consulting engineers, and we have done extensive, we've done CCTV, we've done smoke testing, we've done, evaluated all the manholes in the system. You recall from the last time we showed you some pictures, remember we saw some smoke coming out of a storm drain where there's cross connection. So we've done a lot of investigative work, just as HRSD has done the same thing. And with that work, we've developed these cost estimates and sort of the order of magnitude, how much work is going to have to be done in order to comply with the consent order.
Okay, and secondly, the other cities, are they saving somewhere near the same percentage? I know the numbers are differ because they're larger localities and smaller ones, but percentage-wise, we'll all get roughly the same amount of savings at 192 million at Portsmouth, that same equity.
It's not a complete equitable solution.
Okay.
You're on probably the higher end of the savings, actually. It's based on, obviously, to save $1 billion in the overall program, we're having to do work where it really matters and where we get the most return on it. And based on that estimate, we've identified over $100 million worth of work in Portsmouth that if we do that work, it keeps us from having to do other work in other systems. So it's not equitable across the board as far as savings go.
Okay, Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take it from the city level to the consumer level. Do we have any estimate of what that'll do to the average consumer's water bill?
Yes, Mr. Moody. For the Portsmouth bill, if you recall, and you may not have it with you, we can get you some copies this evening.
Well, first, remember the memorandum that we sent out? Sent it out on January 31st, and it did some projections on what the rates would be. They're in the attachments, and we'll have copies for you.
And what were those increases?
Would be, it's a whole page worth. So let us make a copy. We'll get that
Well,
right now.
and the reason I say, I recall the memo, but the public hasn't been aware of that
Well,
memo.
let's go back to the slide before. And this number is a for real number. If we go it alone, we got to spend $300 million, rain or shine, period.
Understand
Yeah.
that.
And so as you look at what has the least cost to the city, the hybrid plan.
That I understand.
Okay.
I just want it to the lowest common denominator.
Right.
Of the
And
consumer.
it's too many numbers to read here. I'll give you this again tonight. In fact, Raj, where are you? Or Brandon, can you get the copies made?
Is that, and I realize that's an estimate, but can we put that online so
Sure.
the
People can
citizens
see
can
it.
see this? That'd be good.
Two approaches. Which has the least cost, the hybrid plan, and which has the best impact on cleaning up the environment, the load on the river, the hybrid plan.
Okay, very good. Probably, and if you're gonna do something like that, you might wanna also let the citizens know that if we would go it alone, what that rate
Oh,
would
yeah.
be, so
And that-
they're
that's set
educated
forth
as
in this
to, right.
memorandum.
Along with, that's a good point, Mayor, along with who's mandating this.
Yeah.
This is not,
And remember, and the reason, I'm not hedging your question, we take it out to the year 2033. So I don't think you want me to stand up here and say the rate in 2015. is gonna be
Understand.
the- Yeah,
but we can post it online.
yes, sir. Sure will.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate the cooperation.
The next is Shaney.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members,
Good evening.
other city appointees, employees, and guests.
Yes.
The reason for my presentation this evening is to review the annual reassessment. This year it's entitled Renaissance Amid Uncertainty.
I love it.
Okay. And the purpose of our briefing is, of course, is to summarize real property assessments that are proposed for July 1st, 2014. To summarize value changes for each individual neighborhood. To summarize and discuss derivation of the numbers. To summarize and discuss market conditions, ongoing and future projects affecting the market. Our overview. Legal requirements. The purpose of the assessment process is to distribute the burden of taxation equally and equitably amongst all property owners. The state code requires assessments to be uniform on the same class of property within geographic limits. State code also requires assessors to strive for 100% of fair market value. Our focus areas are improved equity and uniformity among similar properties, to conduct neighborhood inspections to identify and list undocumented improvements, finalize conversion and go live with our new camera system July 1st, 2014. Duties and responsibilities of the Assessor's Office. Pursuant to Title 58.1 Code of Virginia, it is my duty to ensure that the burden of taxation shall rest equitably upon all the citizens of the City of Portsmouth. To arrive at an annual assessment that shall be made at 100% of fair market value, emphasizing market activity from January through December 2013. To to continually improve uniformity and equity in assessments among similar properties of classes. Market value defined. The definition of market value: a price at which buyers and sellers with reasonable knowledge of pertinent facts and not under any compulsion are willing to do business with one another. There's particular characteristics and requirements to meet this particular definition. Among them are the buyer and the seller are typically motivated. Both parties are well informed, are well advised, and are acting in what they consider to be their own best interest. A reasonable time is allowed for exposure on the market. Payment is made in terms of cash and U.S. dollars or in terms of financial arrangements comparable thereto, and that the price represents the normal consideration for the property sold unaffected by special or creative financing or sales concessions granted by anyone associated with the sale. Our reassessment results are major obstacles: foreclosures, REO properties, uncertainty over the effect of tolls, uncertainty over national fiscal policies, uncertainty over rising costs of health care, uncertainty in the retail sector. But there are a number of positive indicators. One of the first and most foremost is increasing new construction starts. 114 residential new construction starts in this past year. There's national market indicators that are positive, have been positive for more than a year. Relaxed mortgage standards are still in effect. Continued strong growth in the apartment sector of the commercial market. Reassessment results. In 2013, as you can see, the number of transfers increased to 3,013. But I want to draw your attention to this. In this 3,013 transfers, 64 of those transfers were actually a result of MLK transfers to VDOT. And these 64 are just taxable parcels. We did not include the non-tax parcels in that. There were 27 residential parcels that were conveyed at $920,000 and 37 commercial parcels at $2.9 million. Some of these were little tiny jibs up to so we had just under $300 million that was transferred to the Commonwealth of Virginia that went from taxable properties to non-taxable properties. Talk a few minutes about foreclosures. Once again, there's some positive results here. We went from 564 foreclosures in 2012 down to 508 foreclosures in 2013. But foreclosures are not the only stress on the market. We also have short sales. Last year we had 95 short sales. In addition to that, we had 434 REO sales, which resulted in over 1,000 distressed sales, or 34% of the transfers that we had within the city of Portsmouth. There was a fairly recent article in the Virginian Pilot talking about distressed properties, and throughout the 7-city area, the distressed properties are about 35% of all transfers. So even though we're at 34%, we're a little bit down. Next year, you will see a graph showing the difference not only for the foreclosures, but we're also going to include the short sales and the REOs, because I think everyone has finally begun to realize just how much of an effect they have, as much as an effect as your foreclosures do. A positive step also is the market time. It's down 1 day, but still, you can see for the past 5 years, our market time for selling properties has been on a steady decline. 65 days on the market is an extremely reasonable amount of time to market a piece of property, especially as the market continues as it is. The reassessment results. We're going to look first at the commercial district. And the first thing that you're going to see is commercial district 1, which is down minus 0.94, which is less than 1%. But what I need to bring to your attention is that 1 Crawford Parkway, which are residential condos, are included in this commercial district. When we get our new system, they will be removed from the commercial district and put into the residential system. It's just such a difficult process that after we talked it over with IT and with Vision, it was thought that to come up with the most equitable way to do it, and the easiest way to bring them into the residential system would be to wait till the new system was in place so that we could do it and have the ability to answer questions regarding that. There was District 4 a slight increase. But back on, we want to talk about 1 Crawford Parkway for just a moment to give y'all an idea of what's been going on there and why there was a decrease in their value. There were no valid sales at 1 Crawford Parkway. All of the sales that they had, with the exception of 1, the ratio was well over 100%. So in order to bring it into the guidelines as required by the Commonwealth of Virginia, we made market adjustments to that, and now with the new assessments that we had, every sale that was in there is just below 100%. They average at 99.3%, and that's where we should be. We're going to look now at the reassessment results of individual neighborhoods. And your townhouses and condos. These are where our problems lie. These are what is the main problem with the depression and our particular real estate market. Admiral's Landing, for example, the sales in there, the ratio in there averaged 132%. There were no valid sales whatsoever in Admiral's Landing. They currently have marketed 13 condominiums with no sales forecast in the immediate future. There is a problem. Afton Common townhouses, the average in there was 214%. And so forth and so on. And as you look at them, and Creekside, for example, there were 11 sales in there. The average in there was 126%. After we made our adjustment, it went down to 106%. We're still right at 100, but we're within limitations that are acceptable within the assessment area. And you look down as you go through in downtown, Egret's Cove, we've made strides in there. But everywhere you look that there's a large percentage change, it's either a townhouse or a condo. The only exception to that, and let me give you a caveat on that, is Pepperwood. And that's actually up 14.78%. And you're probably thinking, how did that happen? Let me explain that to you. There was reported a number of years ago, about 25 years ago, a restriction on the Pepperwood condominiums that expired, and some years passed, and it was never discovered that the restriction had expired. So when I became aware of it, I really didn't think it was a fair thing to put the entire burden on the townhouse condos owners at that time. So what we've been doing is each year adding back the reduction that was allowed by the recorded restrictions. This year is the last of it. So the remaining part that had been restricted is now gone. The reassessment results, neighborhood summaries. Overall, residential properties declined 0.46%. 44% of our residential neighborhoods saw a reduction in value, 9% saw an increase, 47% remained unchanged. Commercial property saw an overall decrease of just under 0.05%. But once again, let me mention to you that One Crawford Parkway is involved in that. The reassessment results, let's take a look at this. July 1st, 2013, I certified our land book at $7,018,000,000. Our reassessment value as of today's date was approximately $7,002,000,000. Before we can certify our land book as of July 1st, 2014, we have to add in our fourth quarter building permit activity, which is ongoing now, and adjustments from appeal hearings. And I know the word appeal hearings, everybody immediately thinks a decrease. That's not necessarily so. Last year, a good 25% of all of the hearings that were heard in the assessor's office were complaining about their values going down rather than going up. So the percentage reduction from commercial residential combined was 0.34%, or $15,700,000, which has an estimated impact on revenue of $200,000. That's at this particular point in time. We want to talk about additional considerations, which is the State Corporation Commission. The Virginia Department of Taxation has certified to the State Corporation Commission that the City of Portsmouth's fair market value ratio is at 100%, therefore allowing the taxable ratio of public service companies to be at 100%. This is extremely important. The State Corporation Commission assesses railroads, pipeline, and utility properties. Assessments are conducted by the SCC and are not available generally until September, sometimes late August. These properties are taxable at the same rate as other real estate within the City of Portsmouth. The figures for last year that were obtained in August were the tax value from the SCC was $140.3 million, close to that, and which enabled us to have a city levy at right at about $1.8 million, which is very big. That's why that 100% of fair market value is so important to us. If we were at 89%, we would only be able to assess 89% rather than the 100%. Additional considerations, building permit activities. Through the first 3 quarters of this year, we've added $21,900,000 in value. Fourth quarter building permits are currently being worked and have not been added to the tax rolls as of yet. Undocumented improvements. We've conducted drive-through reviews of 33 neighborhoods for the purpose of identifying and listing undocumented improvements. The value added from this ongoing review has grown to just over $4 million.
Worth the drive, isn't it?
Yes, sir, it is. And what we wanted to do was to give you an example of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So we take our property record card. As y'all all know, there's a sketch of the property on the front. We drive by the property and we look at it. The property on the left-hand side is what's represented by our property record card. It shows a garage door with a car there and a garage and so forth. But as we drove by, as you can see on the slide on the right-hand side, the garage door is no longer there and it has been converted to living area, which has increased the value by $28,800. And this is just one example. With the technology that we have, we're able to go back using pictometry, and we look back, and this one was 2011, we looked at it. And in 2011, the garage door was still there, and we looked at it this year in 2013, and it has now been converted. And this is the type of information that is being supplied to our building official, and he will be using this within his department. So he will have starting dates and so forth that he can go on.
But you wouldn't be able to, Janie, pick that up and through building permits?
No building permit was issued for that.
Oh,
The first thing we do, when we find an improvement on a piece of property that we don't have on our property record card, the first thing we do is we try electronically. We go on the Tidemark system to see if there's anything on Tidemark. If there's not, we don't stop there. We go to the 4th floor and we pull the file for that particular residence. And we look through there to see what, if any, building permits are there. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. If there's been no building permit whatsoever, it's considered undocumented property.
What would the cost of a building permit be for that kind of addition?
Mr. Moody, I really don't know.
We changed the fee.
Which fees are changing?
It's a flat fee now.
But,
My question is, do we go back and bill them for a building permit?
well, the information that we're giving to the building official now gives him a starting point. The problem has always been, you know, where does he start at? How far does he go back? So now that we have the ability to go back with the pictometry and so forth, there are starting points that are available to him. And we have got reports prepared, and we are working closely with him. And I know that they are attempting to develop some type of program within their department.
Of course, along with that comes the question, was it built to code?
Don't know. And also another thing that I will mention to y'all, and we oftentimes mention it to citizens, depending on who your homeowner's insurance is with, should you have a loss, they may or may not cover it. I've talked with Deborah Womack at State Farm, who happens to be my agent. I talked with her. I talked to Prudential. I talked to State Farm, and I've also talked to farmers. And they're very similar. When there's a loss on a piece of property, and they go out and say they have insured 1,800 square feet, and the loss is for 2,400 square feet, the first thing they want to know is, what is this additional square feet? And they'll say, well, we put an addition on. The first thing they ask was, did it meet code? Depending on what it is, they actually inspect it themselves, that they expect the wiring and so forth to see if it met code. If for any reason they should suspect that it doesn't meet code, they have the right to decline coverage of that. So we're always telling citizens, you know, make sure that a building permit is obtained, even if you contract this out. A lot of citizens pay a contractor. The contractor says your building permit is $200. They pay the contractor $200. Their assumption is that the building permit is obtained. They've signed a contract and they go on about their business. Well, we go out there and one of the first things they'll say is, we got a building permit. And we say, well, sir, we have been unable to locate a building permit. There's nothing in the file to indicate that a building permit was ever obtained. And you know, they say, well, we're going back to the contractor and find out why. I at least want my money back. So that's, you know, it could be very tricky. We're going to talk a little bit about our uncertain market factors. One of the biggest problems that we have in the city of Portsmouth is that townhouse and the condo market continues to be depressed as many buyers opt for detached foreclosures, short sale properties, and REO sales. Fewer participants in the condo townhouse market are due to the prices of detached homes. Many times they can buy a detached home for much less than they can buy an attached home, and they don't have to pay association dues. Rising condo fees are driving buyers out of the condo market. For example, Admiral's Landing, where the condo fees exceed $500 a month. Foreclosures, REOs, and other distressed sales affect marketability. Uncertain market factors. Tolls. Tolls are expected to have a significant impact on restaurants and businesses in general in Portsmouth. We could experience a decline in assessed value for the short term. Long-term effects at this point are unknown. The greatest burden of the tolls will be carried by the citizens of Portsmouth.
This is all from Dr. Cook, remember?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
We're going to continue on with uncertain market factors. Foreclosures. While down slightly, foreclosures continue to put downward pressure on values. The downward pressure is especially evident in the townhouse and condominium market. Banks and other lending institutions continue a physical policy of selling properties well below market to avoid holding times and increased foreclosures. These are REOs and short sales. What is a short sale? A short sale is also known as a pre-foreclosure. And it's when a home is sold for less than what's owed on it. Banks like to do this because most of the time they will save 25 to 35% of costs that are involved in a foreclosure sale. An REO is a result of money that is saved on a foreclosure. The property is not sold at foreclosure, so it's retained by the bank or the lending institution, and then it's marketed. An unsold foreclosure becomes an REO, or a real estate owned property. There again, bringing the market down. Most of the time, the REOs and short sales are sold as is. You never know what the property's going to look at. We try to make it a habit to get into as many of them as we possibly can. Some of them are in pristine condition. Others have been trashed, the cabinets torn from the walls, the bathroom fixtures and kitchen fixtures have been torn from the wall, broken all to pieces. But the banks and the lending institutions normally sell as is. The only time you'll see usually any improvements done is if they have been insured by VA or FHA. And then a lot of times when a deed of convenience is made, such as, we'll say, Moody Bank has foreclosed on the property is insured by the Veterans Administration. He goes to the Veterans Administration and says, I want the insurance on this. You can have the property, pay me what's owed. So VA will take it, and VA knows that they can't sell it with no heat and no air conditioning and with no plumbing in it. So VA are usually brought up at least to minimal standards. But they're still going to sell them as quickly as possible because they want them out of their inventory. Because the money that they have tied up keeps money from being unavailable to veterans.
Real quick, Janie, on those short sales, even though if, say, a house is worth $150,000, but they've wrecked it and gutted it and all of that, you're not going to go and change your value. You're going to leave it at $150,000, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, they'll just have to fix it up, but you're not going in and looking inside at all those, right, Billy? All right, okay.
Now, the only time that we go into property is if there's a building permit or we're called and the owner requests us. We do mass appraisal. The only time we get into individual appraisal is at the request of the property owner, or there's a document that requires us to do that. And most people, when they see our car pull up, you know, they tell us right away, we don't want you in. We used to always make it a habit when we
Imagine that.
Stay here, I'll be back.
That's right.
Don't move, I'll be back.
That's right.
at the door, you know, and we would say, you know, we have a building permit here where you've renovated the bathroom. We'd like to come in and take a look at it. Well, we really don't want you in because they're afraid that you're going to see their countertops or their lighting fixtures, and they really don't understand that no value is placed on them. It's the class of the house and the type of lighting, the type of fixtures, the type of countertops are all included in the class of property.
In the class of property, okay.
That's
We're going to talk about something a little bit more pleasant.
Still a good idea to not let you in. It's
Right,
all right.
absolutely.
Right.
Okay, we're going to talk about the Renaissance, okay? And I thought a lot about using the word Renaissance and exactly what it meant. So what I did was I went to the American Macmillan Dictionary, and the definition of an American Renaissance is new interest in something that makes it popular again. Synonyms or related words for this sense of Renaissance include feelings of interest, motivation, involvement, and in particular, public interest, just to mention a few. And I think we are beginning to experience that once again in our city. The Renaissance, this is an example. Hulls Creek, we talked about this last year. There it is. And here it is now. some renaissance.
It looks totally different.
Chick-fil-A. This is what we showed you last year. Here it is now.
Quite a change.
Yeah,
Quite
absolutely.
a change.
The apartments on the former Charlie Falk site. They've gone from a rendering to under construction. Cookout hamburgers. When we looked at it last year, we had a little bit of steel and some foundation. Look at it now. They're again another thriving business. And one of the most exciting areas is the vacant Norcom site.
That's right.
And look at it now.
Good.
We've got our silt fence up. They're doing the underground work and moving along as quickly as they possibly can.
Very good.
My final remarks. The new assessments were mailed today, and they're dated today's date. Informal hearings will begin on March the 12th, and they will run through March 31st. The Board of Equalization will be appointed by the Circuit Court and will be setting hearing dates from early May through mid-June. My department will continue to be represented at all city council functions. And our efforts in terms of community outreach and citizen engagement will continue as well. And we have been, once again, this year, speaking with as many groups as we could. We've been invited back by several of them, and it's quite enjoyable. The citizens are becoming pretty savvy at this assessment business. Does anybody have any questions?
Good job.
Oh, very good presentation. So overall, our real estate assessment citywide, we're
Down less than 0.5%.
less than 0.5%, which is, how much is that again?
Let's
200,000.
200,000.
1,800,000. But right now, as of today, the effect is about 200,000.
About 200,000.
And I have one.
And that's not adding in all of these other new
No, sir.
properties that are all going to be coming online,
They will
right?
be coming online. Now, I will tell you this, the apartments, Dan Ashton's apartments on London Boulevard.
Yeah.
I talked to Dan not long ago. They are beginning to accept applications, beginning May 1st. He's had quite a bit of interest in that, and that's moving along very good. As of July 1st, the state code allows us to do partial assessments, which we will be doing anything that's under construction, especially in the commercial area. Okay? So we will be picking that up. I have one other slide.
Okay.
You go ahead, sir.
I was going to ask about the potential assessment of ERC, towing equipment.
That, I don't really know how to answer you that. It has been determined that it's personal property. I have talked with the Commissioner of Revenue regarding that and was informed by him that his attorney is about halfway through the document and has not given him a ruling on that yet.
That'd be worth $2 billion.
If you ever get it done.
Would be personal property,
Yes, sir.
not
That's
right.
Personal property.
not real estate.
Yes, sir. It does not meet the definition of real property. And we checked with some other areas that have similar property, similar equipment, and it is done as personal property.
Okay.
Okay. If you go to Loudoun County, the private road that's there, all their tolling is taxed as personal property.
Okay.
So we have not been able to determine yet who really owns it. Do the builders own it? Does the state of Virginia own it? There's some language in there, and I'm certainly not qualified to review any of it. So evidently, once the attorney gets through, the commissioner said that he would make a report to y'all regarding that.
I have to look at the check and who paid for it.
Might have to. The only other slide that I have this evening is something different that I've added. This is called Meet the Staff. And the reason that I've included this is a lot of y'all know names. A lot of you have called the office.
Right.
You know voices, but you don't know what they look like. We have the same thing with our citizens. You know, the citizens will call and say, well, I talked to somebody named so-and-so. I'd like to see them when I come up. And it's nice to have a face with a name and a voice.
Yep.
So we've included this.
And look at the smiles, too. Isn't that a happy group?
Yes, it is. The only person who is not pictured is Tawana Mills, and she was out on medical leave at the time that the photo was taken.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
Look good, Billy.
Very pleasant. So we're here to help you,
Yes, ma'am.
and that's the motto.
Well, this complements Janie's presentation. We want to bring you up to date on, and let me tee it up this way. Years ago, in order to get property tax exempt, one had to apply to the General Assembly, and they would take action, legislative action, to have property declared tax exempt as it relates to real estate taxes. As you know, there are 3,000 bills put in during the session, and as a way to cut down on the number of bills, they delegated that authority to local governments. And so it's up to every city council or town council or county board of supervisors to consider whether or not a piece of property goes into the tax exempt category. I say that because we have a situation here that's the Jordan Bridge. You know, this is a bridge that spans the Elizabeth River, the southern branch of the Elizabeth River, and visualize a city limits going right down the middle of the river.
Right.
So let's just say half the bridge is in Chesapeake and half the bridge is in Portsmouth. And we want to brief you on, and this will be a double hitter done by Anita and by Billy, and they've worked quite hard to get this presentation, and I think you'll find it interesting. All right, Billy.
It used to be South Norfolk
Thank you,
Green.
Mr. Rowe. Mayor Wright, Vice Mayor Cherry, members of council. Basically, my job in this whole process was to put a value on the bridge and determine whether it should be valued as real property. So I'm gonna give you a little background first. The bridge, Fig Bridge, or the Jordan Bridge, as we know it, was first proposed by Fig Bridge developers and Britton Hill Partners, which is a financing arm of the project, to the city of Chesapeake in December 2008. It was proposed as an emergency replacement of the old Jordan Bridge, which we all are familiar with, which was permanently closed in November 2009. The bridge, since been constructed, was designed, built, and financed with no public funds. It opened in October 2012 and continues to be privately owned, operated, and maintained. It's a modern, high-level bridge with no lift span, which allows for unrestricted vehicular and ship traffic. My role initially was to determine whether the bridge was taxable. So I had to look at several things. First of all, do the improvements meet the test for real property? I think everybody in the room would agree that the type of construction, the manner of attachment, the fact that it's immobile certainly proves that this property meets that test of real property. What portion of the improvements lie within the city of Portsmouth? From my research, I found that the center line of the channel in the river over to our shoreline is our property. Are there any agreements between Fig Bridge and the city of Portsmouth, special state legislation or local ordinances passed which relieve Fig of any tax liability? And Nita's going to get into this a little more in depth, but I think the short answer here is absolutely not.
I like the way you said that. Absolutely not.
Kind of taking this a little personal because had a hard time getting information from
I know.
certain people. So anyway, now
They won't let you in the house with it. They want you to stay out on the porch, right? That's right, that's right. Stay here, we'll go get it, right?
Right.
That's right.
Now that we know that it is in fact real property, how do I value it, or how do we value it? As an appraiser, we always look at and consider the three approaches to value. You've got the market approach or sales comparison approach, which is based on the concept of value in exchange. So you're comparing the subject property with similar sold properties. The income approach, it's a method of estimating the present value of anticipated income. And market data for a new project such as the Jordan Bridge, is the basis for an operating statement to operate and compute the income approach. And then there's the cost approach, which is based on the principle that a market participant would not pay more than the cost of producing a substitute property with the same utility. Cost approach is most applicable to new construction or unique or specialized property. So as I analyzed the three approaches, I couldn't find a market for bridges. Income information was impossible to obtain.
Together.
It is a special use or unique property, so I used the cost approach in valuing it. So how do I do that? Where do I get my information? We have national cost manuals that are available to us, guides that look at different types of construction, and they cover a wide range of construction. But I thought I would do some comparison costing and look at bridges that have been built recently. I found one in New Jersey. It's the New Victory Bridge in Middlesex County, New Jersey. It was built by Fig Bridge. It's a high-level, fixed-span bridge over a busy shipping lane, very, very similar to our Jordan Bridge. It has 4 lanes of travel, which is really the only difference, which makes it a little bit larger square footage than our bridge. Okay, so first thing I had to do was figure out how much of the bridge was in Portsmouth. From my estimates, I tried to be a little conservative. We've got about 2,900 feet of roadway in Portsmouth, 48 feet wide. It's 139,200 square feet. The cost of the Victory Bridge was $319 per square foot. I made some adjustments to that for location and size. The size adjustment was an increase because economies of scale, something smaller, it costs more to build. So we had 139,200 square feet. I came up with a cost of $275 per square foot, which equals $38,280,000 assessed value, with a tax liability annually of $486,000.
Great.
If there are no questions of me at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nita. Yes.
Instead of using the Victory Bridge, I'm certain during some of their presentations, they had given council and the city the cost of the bridge. Don't we have that figure?
We do, and I think,
I think it's around 300
And the reason
million.
why I say that, they can always come back, well, the Victory Bridge had different specs, and well, if we use their own number, it'd be hard for them to refute that.
I talked to probably 4 different people and got 4 different numbers, but I think the important thing to note is that somebody financed $100 and some million for this bridge, so there was something that was telling them it was worth it. So I couldn't reconcile their numbers that they were feeding me. I can say that the city of Chesapeake has assessed the entire bridge for a very similar number to what we have.
So they're
about
assessing our portion of it as well?
They're not paying taxes.
They aren't
in
paying the
Chesapeake, my
taxes.
They
understanding.
are, but I think Nita will get into some of that.
They are,
right.
but
They are.
they did
That's
something
right.
different.
Goes forward.
Okay.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thanks. Good information.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
I do have a disclaimer here, but I have Sharon, so she will verify that I am not an attorney, and I did actually vet all of our information through the city attorney's office, so I feel pretty comfortable that what we're sharing with you about the FIG company's argument and where we stand legally on this position.
But we're all going to law school at that great law school.
Right. That's right, Sharon.
And they're very hard professors.
This is pretty much, the FIG company has 4 points to their argument. The first one is the Section 19 in the agreement that they have with the city of Chesapeake called the Acquisition and Development Agreement. And I'm going to read this in detail because we're going to come back to this again and break this section down, because they're using this argument to say that they don't need to pay taxes, and we can actually change this to show where they do need to pay taxes. It says the purchaser shall be solely responsible for all taxes, fees, and charges that may be assessed or charged upon their property in the cities of Chesapeake and Portsmouth, the purchaser being the FIG company. Now they go on to say the purchaser agrees that for purpose of real estate taxation, the New Jordan Bridge is to be a fixture to the land in Chesapeake. Purchaser shall not be subject to real estate taxes for the same component of real property or portion thereof in more than one locality. The second point to their argument is that, as to why they shouldn't have to pay taxes, is because Portsmouth emergency responders are not charged tolls. But we also know that ERC does this for the Midtown and the downtown tunnel, so we really don't think that this is a relevant argument at this point in time. Their third argument is that they invested a total of $116,000 in the city of Portsmouth to support signage and signaling for the new bridge. And then their final argument, I see your look, that's a lot of money in it, $116,000. Their final argument is that the Jordan Bridge's commuter club program would help encourage economic development in the city of Portsmouth. So I actually went online and tried to enroll in the commuter club program to see how many businesses were participating in that program. And that commuter club program is sort of like a frequent flyer type program. The more you go over, you get certain points, and you can redeem those points at different businesses. There are a total of 12 businesses that participate in the commuter club program. 2 of those are businesses in Portsmouth.
That's right. That's right.
So now our research covered different things. The agreement between the city of Chesapeake and the FIG Bridge Company, and also point out that's not an agreement that includes Portsmouth. We also looked at the Acts of the General Assembly, Chapter 581 in the year 2009, and also wanted to point out that our research reflected that the city of Portsmouth is not a party to the 2-party agreement with the FIG company and the city of Chesapeake. Now let's take a look in detail and break down the FIG's agreement with Chesapeake, going back to that original clause that I read. And if you look at the page 11, the first red section, it says the purchaser shall be solely responsible for all taxes, fees, and charges that may be assessed or charged upon their property in the cities of Chesapeake and Portsmouth. So clearly, the city of Chesapeake recognized that Portsmouth had the right to tax, and they acknowledged that. However, as the paragraph continues, it says the purchaser, which again is a FIG company, shall not be subject to real estate taxes for the same component of real property or portion thereof in more than one locality. So it's basically saying no, neither side can double tax. So we are not taxing the Chesapeake side, and the Chesapeake side is not taxing our side. This phrase acknowledges that the city of Portsmouth cannot tax the same portion of the Jordan Bridge that Chesapeake tax. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, but I think the disclaimers are buried in the legal language here. When you look at the Acts of the General Assembly, Chapter 581, there were 4 sections of Virginia Code that the bridge was not subject to. These provisions were the Highway Bridges and Ferries Act, the Virginia Highway Corporation Act, the Public-Private Transportation Act, the PPTA that everyone's familiar with, and the Virginia Public Procurement Act. So the bridge, the FIG company, were not subject to this by the General Assembly.
just like your private business is private, what this says, this is a private bridge. None of these acts apply to this bridge.
Thank you, John. So getting down into the weeds of the legal documents, it basically says that with the PPA, that the bridge is not classified as indirectly owned by the Commonwealth. So when you do have the PPTA, that property that the state has with the public-private partnership is considered indirectly owned, so it's not subject to taxation. But now that they are no longer subject to the PPTA, the property is not indirectly owned. So that means the Jordan Bridge loses its ability to be exempt from taxation because of that. Chapter 5.1 of the Acts of the General Assembly does not modify Portsmouth's ability to tax. So if the property belongs to a corporation or firm, it shall be listed and taxed to the corporation or firm. So in conclusion, there was nothing enacted by the General Assembly that gives the FIG company any tax immunity. The agreement between the FIG company and the City of Chesapeake does not give the FIG company tax immunity. And it is appropriate and legal for Portsmouth to tax that portion of the bridge that is within the city limits of Portsmouth. And their delinquent tax is $450,604.
Have we billed them?
Oh, yeah. That's what that means.
That's what that is all about.
They've gotten the bill and they haven't paid it.
That's right.
For 2 or 3 days. So how do we move forward with this?
You're gonna have to
That's up to the
negotiate.
treasurer. I mean, I would predict at some point in time, they're gonna come and knock on your door and say, waive the tax, make us tax exempt. And my recommendation is that you not do that.
That's right.
I'm not sold on their argument.
Mm-mm.
I don't see $120,000 worth of signs. I don't see the benefit of the Commuters Club.
Well, the signs will attract vehicles, and they collect the tolls. They don't share any of the profits of the tolls with us, do they?
So there's a process that Jimmy Williams follows. You know, you can sell property for taxes. That would be a very interesting sale.
It will be.
You want to buy a bridge?
Half a bridge.
Half a bridge.
Half of it anyway.
This brings us to Sherry. Can we get Sherry on the line? Sherry tried to call in. You saw that on the first presentation when the little dialogue box. And ever since then, she's getting a busy signal. She's going to come online, and she'll hear you through this device here, and she will see you. This is a camera. So she's going to be looking at the 7 of you, not at me. The last time we did this, she was looking at a computer screen. So think about how difficult it is to talk with somebody that you can't see. They can see you. So we're one more step into technology with this. Remember, crossovers taking place. All the Senate bills that were passed went over to the House. All the House bills went over to the Senate. And they're working their way through the 2 bodies. She'll give you a status report on the budget. The budget is going to be an issue. It always is, but it's going to be a particular issue this year. She'll talk about the Hampton Roads Accountability Act, and as we wait, what I'm about to say, please do not misinterpret this that I am for or against the current bill. A lot of people have tried to compare it to the bill that was passed in 2007, House Bill 3202, which created the Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. That authority consisted of the same type of people, elected officials. There were no appointed people on the authority. It was the chief elected official of every city and county, which would be either the mayor or the chairman of the board. But what it did do it gave the authority the ability to raise taxes, to levy a tax, and that was the sales tax. That authority had the authority to levy a sales tax on certain things relating to vehicles. It got challenged in the Supreme Court, and what the Supreme Court said is that you have to be directly elected in order to raise the tax. It didn't pass muster that you were elected by your jurisdiction, and then by virtue of that position, hey Sherry, by virtue of that position, you were on this authority. Now, tolls, as you know, from our most recent Supreme Court case, the law in Virginia is that a toll is not a tax. And whether you like that or not, that is what the law is. A toll is not the tax. This authority, this accountability commission, will have the ability to levy tolls. And that's not a new thing. Remember, those of you who may have only read about it and don't remember it, but there was a Elizabeth River Tunnel Commission when the 2 tunnels got built. But they had the ability to levy a toll, to put a toll on the tunnel, and to raise those tolls from time to time. So please, as you look at this bill, don't get excited and let your hair catch on fire and say this is that same bill all over again. It's different. What the problem is with the legislation that was passed last year that created a new revenue source for transportation construction is that it created additional monies for Hampton Roads and for Northern Virginia. And that's almost a guaranteed stream of revenue. And there's no body, B-O-D-Y, there's no entity that could take that money and use it as debt service for bonds. The planning district does not have bonding authority. The regional transportation organization doesn't have bonding authority. So you can't take $100 million worth of new revenue and use that for debt service to issue $1 billion worth of bonds. And so the General Assembly saw the real purpose of this legislation was to create an entity that could take this new money that's coming in and use it to issue bonds. Sherry, can you hear us? Well, we're going to turn you up a little bit. Can you see us?
No, we're working on that.
Oh, we're working on it. I'm standing in the way.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Did we support this in a Hampton Roads Transit meeting, or I know, I had 3 calls this weekend saying that we supported it. I said nothing's came through this council.
To my knowledge, there has not been a formal vote on
At all.
On this legislation. Okay, there has been a lot of discussion about the need for a agency to bond. I mean, it only makes sense. In fact, bond attorneys looked at it and said none of the existing organizations can do that. This bill was put in independent of the regional organizations. It was put in on the Senate side by Senator Wagner of Virginia Beach, and on the House side by Delegate Chris Jones. And remember what Chris is. Chris is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, and he has served on a city council just like you. The City Council of Suffolk got elected in 1986, and he also served as the mayor. And golly day, I'm in there. Can you see us now?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
But where are we at as a council in support, against? I mean,
Well, let's hear from
Having this on
Sherry.
speaker.
Yeah, because she's going to tell you that there's a lot of support in Richmond. I mean, you can take your position, but what I'm asking you to do is do it in a way that is rational. If you feel you need to take a position politically, that's fine. But
You finish.
okay. When you've got two very senior people behind two identical pieces of legislation, there's a very good chance that this bill is going to pass. And it's being supported by the administration. So there's a very good chance for it to become law. If you're concerned about it, maybe a better approach might be is find a way that you can amend it so that you can get your concerns addressed.
Well, the PPTA passed almost unanimously, but look where we are with tolls.
Tolls,
The thing
right.
that I need more clarification on, John, you said there's a lot of differences. Maybe after Sherry gets finished, you can share why people shouldn't be alarmed that this commission will be able to levy tolls on other facilities with no recourse from citizens.
Well, and that's the biggest difference, Bill, is that this body, this new accountability commission, doesn't have the ability to tax. Now, it does have, and
But can they levy tolls?
they can't,
Oh, yeah.
and I said that.
Well,
They can-
and goes back to the argument, and I know where the Supreme Court decided that a toll is not a tax, but to me and a lot of others in this city, in this region, a toll is a tax.
Bill, I hear you loud and clear, and I'm sorry that we lost. I was hoping that we would win. My heart is with that. But we have the reality that the law of the land is that a toll is not a tax. And so, what do? Do we kill this? I mean, you're kind of in a paradox in the sense that there is no capacity to leverage these funds if you don't have an agency that can bond.
Bond it.
And, there are certain, and you may or may not agree with this, there are certain things that you probably would toll. Now, whether or not you split fund it with a toll and some other funding, I mean, I can't predict that.
Well, the power to bond doesn't mean they can have the power to
That's
toll.
true.
They can be separated.
That's true. So, Sherry, bring us up to date on where we are in the General Assembly. Are you doing well?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Wright, members of council, city manager and staff. I'm well, I hope you are. I'm trying to fight off a cold, I think. Just dovetailing off of your conversation. Can you hear me, guys? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Very loud
Come on.
and clear.
Okay.
And she's rapping.
Catching up.
Hello?
yeah.
Yeah, you're there.
Okay, Senator Wagner's version was heard today in the House Transportation Committee. There were some citizens from Hampton Roads that came forward to speak against the bill, citing some of the same concerns that Councilman Moody had just spoke about. The bill did pass, and a couple of the points that was made in discussing the bill was that this commission is going to be held by local elected officials, which is very different than the former version that they tried to do in 2007. And because it is going to be at the local level, the decisions will be made on PPTAs with local input, far more local input at the local level than the PPTA agreement that was done with ERC, which Senator Wagner even himself said it was sort of agreement that was done in the dark with very, very little regional input and local input. So that's the plus side for having this particular commission. It will have tolling authority, and as John stated, the Supreme Court has ruled that a toll is not a tax. So they will have tolling authority and bonding authority. There is huge amount of support up at the General Assembly for this piece of legislation. Senator Wagner's bill came out of the House Transportation Committee today with a unanimous vote, 18-0. Delegate Jones's bill is going to be heard tomorrow in Senate Transportation Committee. It's also going to come out, I'm predicting, unanimously. I'm told the only difference between the two right now are the number of members from the House and Senate that will serve on the commission. The bill is going to go to conference so they can iron out that detail, and those interested persons who have anything that they would like to add or subtract from the bill or would like to see addressed as they work out the final language of the bill are being urged to send letters to the patrons, Senator Wagner and Chris Jones, Delegate Jones.
That means you're not going to listen.
Yes, and it's slow mail.
Questions?
No?
No.
How's our delegation? Have they voiced their support of this or any reservations?
I know Senator Lucas was one of the co-patrons on the Senate version, so she is in support of it. To be honest with you, I've not spoken with the others, but just looking at the vote that came off, they did vote for it.
Sure.
Okay.
They've not voted against it.
Yes, ma'am.
Sherry or John, this body, as it would be set up, it's not just local elected officials, it's actually the mayors or the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, right?
Well, yeah, and that was
Yes.
that was exactly the same composition, despite what was said at the General Assembly. You can read it right here, as the 2007. It was the chief elected.
Yes.
Now another person could be designated, but it had to be somebody from that governing body. It couldn't be me. It could be a manager. It couldn't be the director of public works. It had to be elected.
So it's somebody that's engaged and you can touch
Right.
and talk to.
And the way Bob and I have done a little research locally, and this is one of those adamant points that Chris Jones, Bob, you might want to stand up, is about. Remember, Chris got elected in '86 to the Suffolk Council. He also served as mayor. And knowing how the dynamics of a council operates, it's a very important thing for him that the representative be the chief elected, the person that is either the mayor or the chairman. Is that the intelligence?
Yeah, I would add 2 points to that. One, at least I think the general opinion is most mayors and chairs are elected at large within their localities. They're not. And so they are the one member of a council or board of supervisors that has been elected by the general population of their community. So that was an important point. And the other one was clearly, and this has been discussed at some length, not to have proxy voting. In other words, if you got to a tough vote, let's say it's an issue with a toll or something like that, not to send, say, a borough representative from a safe district to vote for you. They want to make sure that the rubber stops for the road.
Let me emphasize, and I can tell you firsthand about the Suffolk experience. When I was manager of Suffolk, the mayor was not elected citywide. It was elected by his or her peers. When they went to a citywide election, or the election of the mayor directly, the mayor was elected by everybody in that 430 square miles, not just one borough. And the same is true in Norfolk. So the rationale is have the mayor or the chairman of the board because he or she represents everybody.
Sherry, will each elected official have an equal vote?
I'm told there is going to be, they were talking about the votes at the
Yeah, I can answer that.
PDC meeting. Go ahead, John.
Sherry, I can answer that. It's it's got to pass by 2/3, and it's got to pass, and it's got to represent 2/3 of the population that's in the footprint. So no one jurisdiction can cause one thing to happen.
But
Or not to happen.
Not to happen.
But the city of Virginia Beach's elected official's vote will weigh more heavily than Portsmouth would. Is that accurate?
No, it doesn't tally quite that way. I mean, if Will Sessom is voting, he doesn't count twice, and Kenny only counts one time. It's based on 2/3 of the people sitting around the table and 2/3 of the population of the whole commission.
Well, if Virginia Beach, their population is roughly 4 times ours, then his vote is worth more than our mayor's would be, based on population.
Yes.
So consequently, if there's a motion to toll the Westover Bridge, for instance, and our mayor's vote is not equal to Will Sessom's, so our citizens next election, they can vote to oust Will Sessom's out of office. So in that respect, it's not equal. It sounds good when you're trying to sell the bill that it's going to be staffed by elected officials. Each of them will have a vote. Well, yeah, each of them has a vote, but it's based on population.
Your point is very, very good.
Has a jurisdiction.
But it's my understanding, and this is from the Secretary of Transportation, that if the locality where the project exists totally doesn't want it, it doesn't take place. So the locality has a veto.
Is that in the bill?
I don't know.
Does that mean?
That was actually brought up. Somebody asked a question to the secretary last week. He didn't answer it directly, and the individual that asked the question came up to me afterwards and showed me the minutes of the Northern Virginia meeting where they were having the same discussion, and it's clearly in the language that if the locality opposes it, they can't vote to do it. But he asked the secretary, and I think it didn't come out exactly the right way, but the secretary did say they were trying to model it behind Northern Virginia. So it was implied that it's in there. So if using your example, if we didn't want that, then even the 2/3 wouldn't matter. But we got to make sure that language is there.
Yeah, can you research that, Sherry, make sure that
I'm looking at it now. I don't quite see it that way unless I'm misinterpreting what I'm reading.
Somebody go online too, it's got a computer, and take a look.
Well, he shared with me that it wasn't on the bill.
Can you tell us what it says?
I'm looking at line 74, and it says, however, no motion to fund a specific facility or service shall fail because of this population criteria if such facility or service is not located or to be located or provided or to be provided within the county or city whose chief elected officer's sole negative vote caused the facility or service to fail to meet the population criterion.
Okay. What I was trying to say, maybe not so well. Let's say that you only have one shot to put your input. Is it better to say no, or is it better, let's be real about this, or is it better to try to get what you want? And your point is very good. Wouldn't it be better to talk to Chris and to Frank and say, look, now how fair is it if the project is totally in one jurisdiction and that jurisdiction votes no for that project to go ahead? It's not a lot of fun to be hit by the train. I'd rather try to divert the train.
Well, yeah, we need the answer to that, but
your point is good, Bill.
But even a more germane question is, why do they need tolling authority? If it's bonding authority, that's the important reason for creating this commission. Give them bonding authority.
I'll tell you why they need it.
Don't give them tolling authority.
Because the General Assembly, quite frankly, and the Speaker of the House said this in December, will not own up to the responsibility of the state legislature to raise taxes, the T word, for road construction. And I'm troubled too by the concept of having essentially 3 VDOTs, a Northern Virginia VDOT, a Hampton Roads VDOT, and a statewide VDOT. When that container of 52,000 Nike tennis shoes comes through Hampton Roads, a couple of hundred might end up in Bristol, Virginia. And how are they going to get there? They're going to get there by roads. They're going to come first. There's a poster in our stairwell urging people to use the steps, and it says, the way you start a long journey is the first step. Well, the first step of the long journey from here to Bristol is in Portsmouth. And so, yeah, I think a fair way to do this is to have the General Assembly own up. And they haven't done it for 23 years.
But the selling point that they're trying to emphasize is they're now bringing that to the locality so we have more of a voice. They're avoiding their job is what they're doing.
As long as that voice can say we don't want a certain facility in Portsmouth told. So we definitely need to speak to the patrons of the bill, sponsors of the bill.
I'm trying to help you strategically. I'm not advocating for or against, but I think it's a better approach. If you know that this thing's going to pass, find ways to make it better.
I agree.
The
Sounds
key
like
is
an
working
amendment of
together.
veto to match
Work
Northern
together.
Virginia, like y'all are saying, is a
Well, the gentleman gave me a copy, and they were online, and I can find them, but it was a copy of the minutes in Northern Virginia. It was clearly stated in there that a locality which the project was being done did have the option to say, no, we don't want that, and the group couldn't do it. And
that's palatable.
Right, I didn't see that in either one of these bills when I looked, but, and again, so that might be something we may want to ask Sherry and John to try to get with Chris Jones and Wagner and see if we can't get that in there.
Get that in there.
Or at least see how Northern Virginia made that. I don't know if they made it in. It was in the minutes that the guy showed me, and he says, hey, Mayor, I think you might want to be interested
Bob
in
reminded
this.
me of something. When Bill Howell was here, Speaker of the House Bill Howell, in December, he confessed that he finally had religion, that he realized that the state was going to have to raise taxes in order to get additional funding. And this is a paraphrase, he said he was in denial for 2 decades. But he said that the priority is going to go to these projects: congestion, economic development, and safety. Okay. As far as congestion is concerned, technically we don't, Bob, do we have any congestion projects?
Not left. Downtown, Midtown Tunnel would have been the 2.
So you're looking at big things like 64 on the peninsula. I mean, think about the times that you've left Richmond on a Friday night and get caught at Toano. That's the type of congestion they're talking about.
John?
Yes?
If the money is deposited into the fund, shall be used solely for new construction projects on new or existing highways, bridges, and tunnels in localities comprising Planning District 23. They struck the word roads, so it's highways, bridges, and tunnels.
New.
New.
New or existing.
Oh, okay.
New or existing.
And keep in mind that the PDC, and they've already identified 9 what they call mega projects that are probably going to take place in this region in the next 20 to 30 years. And through all of their different analysis, these were the 9, and I think everybody concluded that, yeah, they're probably the top 9. Now, whether they're ranked in what order goes first will be based on how they get the financing and the bonding, and whether they're able to do 2 at a time or 1 at a time, or one cancels out the other one. All of those dynamics will still having to be figured out. But there are 9 what they call mega projects, and I don't think any of us disagree with that, but I think our concern is things like the Churchland Bridge, that if they don't hit the mega deal or fit the mega definition, which it doesn't, that we would get slighted. And so I think they tried to clean that up too as well.
No, we went after a budget amendment on the Churchland Bridge, and what was fatal to us was the fact that several years back, in order to get the project going, we agreed to make it a revenue sharing project. Mm-hmm. And the General Assembly has never funded through the budget a revenue sharing project. And so consequently, they did not want to be breaking that long-standing tradition. And we tried our best. I mean, we said it's a rickety bridge, it's going to get more travel.
It's going to impact the region.
Yeah.
John.
Now with that lane closure,
Yes,
John,
ma'am.
one of the things I was just thinking, because this is not only impacting us, it's impacting some of the other areas around too. Chair, from those that are there around the table who are coming in with the discussions at the meeting, what has been your impressions of the general feelings from Hampton Roads on the impact as they perceive it in this area for the cities that are going to be impacted by it?
Councilman Randall, there is a support. Norfolk spoke to it today in support. Virginia Beach is in support. Newport News, there's not any localities from Hampton Roads region have come out against it.
Okay, that's what I was trying to find out.
Well, I thought it was important to let you hear this from Sherry, that a bill's going to come out. The question is, do you die saying not only no, but heck no? How effective is that?
Yeah.
Or is it better to take your concern bill, which is a great concern,
And let's
and try
talk
to
together.
get that in part of the legislation?
And also, if I may interject here, Portsmouth, through my presence, we've not taken a position officially at any of the committee meetings. I've just been monitoring the bill.
Okay, we need to.
Well, I think we need to send an
Voice it.
official communication to our delegation, let them know that we would like the veto of a locality on the tolling the facilities in there.
And that's in their jurisdiction.
That's right.
The companion bill or the similar bill in Northern Virginia, Sherry, does it have the same language, or is that one bill?
No, sir. In fact, that was Wagner's bill. He first put in.
He framed it from that.
That's right. And it did not fit. It's like having a size 8 foot and trying to wear a size 13. It just did not fit.
Yeah, the original bill, we were told, was just a placeholder while they were trying to cobble together this bill that's still being cobbled together.
The other thing, Sherry, maybe you can speak to this. I think John gave us an answer. Social media for the last few weeks has been saying that the members of the commission would get salaries, and I understand that is not the case. Can you verify that?
Councilman Moody, I have reposed that question, and I have been told that salaries were not considered part of compensation, that the compensation that the bill is referring to is basically for expenses, which is not uncommon to any other commission that an official may sit on.
Per diem, yeah.
Per diem, yes, but not salaries.
I'm mindful of the clock. It's you got 19 minutes to eat, and I know that Deborah's concerned about that too. Sherry, any other thing? I told council that the budget's going to be the hang-up, and what's the hang-up there is
Medicaid expansion.
Medicaid expansion.
Right. The Saturday, March 8th is going to be the day that the General Assembly is set to adjourn. By then, they will have completed all the work on the legislative bills. There will more than likely not complete the budget. We're hearing that they're going to adjourn sine die, and then they're going to go immediately into special session. Groups will come back over March and April to work on the compromise, if they can find a compromise on the Medicaid piece. Other than that, they're about $40 million apart, which, according to Delegate Jones, without the Medicaid piece, they could settle the budget by next week, but that's not going to happen.
Sherry, hold on a second. Because this is being considered tomorrow, would it be appropriate for Sherry to speak and share the concerns that you have articulated tonight?
Yes. Yes. Most
Absolutely.
definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. All right, Sherry, did you get that? We'll talk.
All right, I look forward to hearing back from you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you,
Take care, Sherry.
Take care, sweetheart.
Oh,
Yes?
no, bye. We were asked by the STOP organization to support their winterization. Here's the draft letter, and if it's okay with you, we'll get it put on the mayor's stationery. I'm sorry. And we'll get it. Please take a look at that. Make sure
This one here.
that you're okay with
Yeah,
it.
that's fine.
We all know STOP's been here forever. They've got about
We know,
300
yeah.
Program, and I recommend that we do it.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
about 350 homes in our city they've been helping.
No problem.
Okay, where we at? We all
I
done now?
trust you.
Yes, sir.
That's a
Any
drain.
liaison reports? Anything? Okay.
Members of council, at this time, we have no closed session items, so if we can have Grace back, Bishop Edmonds. We will break for dinner and then go into your meeting at 7.
Dear Lord, thank you for the food that has been prepared